Hi, everyone, and welcome to Build Your Future, the Property Developers Podcast. Today, I'd like to interview Alistair Hayward-Wright. He is the founder and director of Hayward-Wright, the accountancy practice. Welcome, Alistair.
Hi, Tom. Pleasure to be here.
Welcome to 2026. How are you feeling?
Really excited. I kind of always love the New Year thing. Come back with that. Have a decent break over Christmas. It's a time when kind of I can really switch off because generally no one's really doing anything. Clients switch off and stuff like that. So get a proper break and come back fresh for the New Year. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Good stuff. I think it was one of those times where people needed a much needed break, and now it's kind of back to hitting the ground running. We run some property webinars, and the last one that we ran the other week has kind of just really gone crazy, where I think a lot of people now are starting to really want to hit the ground running in 2026. It's the classic kind of new year, new me, wanting to get down the gym, wanting to put in kind of new habits, and equally I think people are now seriously wanting to take the next step in terms of getting into property.
I think you're right, and I think look, let's face it, it's still tough out there at the moment. But I think, and there's been a lot of uncertainty, but uh, I think there's a confidence that's coming back. We know it's tough, we know it's hard, but actually we know what we're dealing with. We know what the next year looks like, and people have got the opportunity to get on and do something. And certainly we've seen that even a few days in. The conversations we're having with clients are more positive and more, well, how do we make this work, or how do we achieve this, rather than just, oh, it's doom and gloom. So yeah, it's great.
That's good to hear. I was talking to a commercial agent the other day, and she, obviously being at the forefront, deals with a lot of different clients, and sometimes people are very pessimistic within the market, some people are very optimistic, and I think there's kind of a happy medium, because we talk a lot about trying to do deals and trying to do developments, and if you're super pessimistic, I've never found a slam dunk easy site. There's always going to be challenges, be it the build, be it potential constraints, be it planning. There's always going to be some form of challenge, and so if you're always super pessimistic, you'll never do any deals ever, because a lot of the value is coming from overcoming those difficulties and overcoming those challenges. But then equally, I've seen some people that are super optimistic and then can end up getting burnt because they think that the GDV is £3 million more than what it actually is, and everything else. So it's just trying to find that happy medium, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, I echo those thoughts. I see it all the time. And I always say this too, when we're talking to property developers and investors, I always say to them, you will, I can guarantee you will find a reason not to do that project. If you don't want to do it, there's guaranteed there will be a reason not to do it. But you're absolutely right. It's actually taking on the challenging ones. And that's where, with some sensible planning, and a sensible head on, you can actually make a real difference. And that I've seen people make some really good money through actually accepting that it's going to be a challenge, it's going to be difficult, but actually if I can tick those boxes and solve those problems, that's where my reward comes.
Yeah, I completely agree. So tell us a bit more about yourself then. So the people that haven't heard of you before, tell us a bit more about kind of yourself and your business and how you got started.
So I kind of came from a family of entrepreneurs. The whole family are kind of self-employed in all kinds of different sectors. I've got everything from kind of motor mechanics to shop owners to property investors to consultancy in the IT space. So the kind of whole family come from an entrepreneurial background. I grew up in that environment, and I think it was always a case of I wanted my own business. Completely did my A levels at school. Didn't bother going to uni. I wanted to get out. I wanted to earn money, and almost fell into accountancy. If I'm brutally honest, I got an opportunity to take on a training contract with the local accountancy practice, and I was always generally better with numbers than I was with letters, so it kind of just felt like the natural way. Got involved in that. Really started to enjoy it, to be honest. But what I really enjoyed out of it was actually the interaction with clients and working with clients rather than actually just churning out accounts. And it gave me the opportunity to work with business owners. So, and that variety of stuff. So I could be working with all kinds of different sectors of businesses. And that's what I really, really loved. I got a little bit frustrated partway through my accountancy professional exams. I struggled through those a little bit because, again, I was more interested in working and earning money rather than sitting there and studying and not earning money, shall we say. So I nearly went off and bought an IT business, but kind of sat down, had a word with myself, said, look, you come halfway through this, let's get it finished. You can go off and do whatever you want after that. So completed my accountancy exams, did my post-qualification period before I could get my practice certificate and do something on my own. and that came around. And at the time, I was doing a bit of I was a Sage reseller, so I was reselling Sage software. And I was with a local business doing an installation and some training on Sage Accountancy package for a client. And the guy said, "Oh, friend of mine in the village, he's got a little accountancy practice. She wants to retire. She wants to sell it. Would you be interested in a conversation?" So I popped it on, had a chat with her, shook hands at the time, bought the business. Small block of clients, one member of staff, and we've grown it from there really through a continued acquisition and organic growth strategy.
Tell everyone when you started this business and perhaps some of the challenges and that you faced, because obviously you've grown it to a successful company from one individual to now a team of 30. Can I talk to us a bit more about kind of the process of that and the trials and tribulations of growing this business?
There's a lot of them. No, it's been an absolute roller coaster, and don't get me wrong, there is tough days, as we all know. But on the whole, I absolutely love it. Love the journey I've been on. Love where we're going. The opportunities moving forward, it's great. So I started so that was in 2007. As I acquired this practice, started to grow it. So we bedded in the existing clients, got around those, started to actually manage to upsell to a lot of those clients, because actually it was more a bookkeeping and payroll bureau than it was an accountancy practice. So a lot of the clients had their transactional stuff done by this business, but they'd go off to another provider to do the year-end accounts and stuff like that. But because of my background, I could pick all that work up. So it was actually a great opportunity. Absolutely, it was a great stepping stone to build on. So we kind of maximised the value out of the existing client bank, continued to grow, bringing new clients in. Obviously, the time 2008 came around, and that was some initially incredibly daunting time. Financial crisis, didn't really know where this was going to end, but actually, and at the time I felt awful talking about it, but it was actually a big plus for us, because what we found was there were a lot of clients out there that needed help, needed support. They were turning to their existing provider, maybe not getting the support that they wanted, needed. And came and looking for alternatives, and we grew quite strongly through that financial crisis. And again, is fast forward a little bit, we had the same through kind of COVID-19 and the lockdowns and stuff like that. We grew quite strongly during those periods because we were there to support and help clients through. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm a massive believer in that. I think to be really successful, you do need a real core of good quality professionals around you, particularly in property. It's challenging, but that goes across all businesses really. And I'm a big believer in, and I actually think as a professional services sector, we should actually be doing more to work amongst ourselves within the professional services sector to support clients as well. So I'm a big fan of having a really strong relationship between the accountant, the lawyer, the commercial broker, the commercial agents, and the client, and almost that circle should all be talking amongst themselves. And that I believe is when you really can add value to a client and really support a client to achieve their goals.
I think too many times people kind of go, well, that's not my job, that's not my sector. And then actually you end up becoming carrier pigeon, having to carry and make sure that nothing gets lost in translation. And when you're kind of dealing with all these different parties and you're getting 100 emails a day, it's so easy for something to get slipped. And that's one of the key things why so many things take such a considerable amount of time with dealing with solicitors, for example. Things can take months and months. And it's just because one email can get missed. And then before you know it, it's forgotten about. And then that constant chasing when you could be focusing on a thing that would add value to your business. Instead, you're essentially doing an admin task of chasing people up.
That's it, exactly. It's so important to have that structure around you, because you're right, and we're all guilty of it. It's bureaucracy and red tape is getting worse. It is more difficult, but it's about finding ways to circumvent that as best you can and work that through and keep it as slick as possible, because actually ultimately the skill set of that individual, the skill set of that client is in what they do. So a successful property developer is really good at property development. They're not necessarily, and don't need to be, good at the admin bits and stuff like that. There should be a team around them doing that stuff. And that was something I had to, I'm a bit of a control freak. And that was something that I really had to kind of learn and embed in myself when I started the business, because I tried to do everything. I wanted to do everything myself, micromanage absolutely everything, and you just can't scale a business like that. So I learned very early on that actually I need to bring good people in around me to support and let me do the bit that I'm good at, and let others do what they're good at.
It's a tough balance, isn't it? Because I think that is the classic entrepreneurial journey where you want to learn absolutely everything in a sector, for instance. And then if you're a property investor, you're then concerned that someone's going to pull the wool over your eyes and try and charge you more than it's actually worth, etc. So I understand one side of kind of understanding a bit, but then you end up spreading yourself too thin. One of the kind of key learnings for me was in property development, I was trying to, again, learn and understand absolutely everything. And then when I went to work for a major house build, you realize, well, everyone's actually split into their own departments, right? You've got the accountancy team, you've got the marketing sales team, you've got the land team, you've got the construction, you've got the engineers, the technical teams, etc. You don't need to know everything. You just need to choose what skill you want to be good at and then get the right people around you to assist in those other areas.
Absolutely. I'm a massive believer in employing and having people around you that are better than you in those areas, because that's how you build the strongest team.
So obviously this is a property podcast and I wanted to bring you on because I know that you have a bit of a portfolio yourself. Tell me a bit more about that.
Again, a little bit by accident. So very early on, I took on a client for the accountancy business who was a local, very successful developer investor in property. Happened to be a really, really nice guy as well, and we kind of hit it off on a friendship level as well, and that kind of friendship developed and stuff. And obviously, I got more involved in what he was doing, seeing what he was doing, and I thought, oh, actually, I quite like this. I quite like this. And then just through a series of events, I ended up with a rental property. So it was a property I lived in. Me and my partner got together. We both had properties of our own. We rented those out, bought a property together. So we had a couple of rentals, and it kind of spiraled from there a little bit. And over time, again, we've touched on it already, where you can be successful in a business, and obviously you reap the rewards of that, and it's then finding where to then invest that money. So we've built a portfolio which is a real mix. Actually, we've got quite a number of residential rentals. We've got a couple of commercial properties, and again through another client, but a different client, we managed to get involved in HMOs as well. So we've got a couple of student HMOs, which were really good fun because we did them as projects. So we bought the unconverted 3-bed house and converted them into 6-bed HMOs, with a client of mine who's a very successful developer. He's a builder by trade, but has built a significant property portfolio doing the same thing. So we sourced the properties, he did the conversion for us, and we've retained the asset.
Okay, so you did that under a joint venture, did you?
No, it was a pure. We took him on as a builder, as the contractor to develop the properties. It was me and my partner bought the property, and he developed them out for us. But again, it's coming back to what we talked about a moment ago around having really good people around you, because Alan was a great guy. I trusted him completely. So, when he goes, right, this is what you need to do. This is how this is what I would do with that property. This is how you do it. This is what it's going to cost you. There was never that concern of going, oh, am I being ripped up here or whatever. So I was lucky in so much as it was relatively easy, relatively painless, sorry. That said, the last one that we did was kind of during the COVID times, and obviously that spike in material costs and stuff like that. So that got a little bit tense a few times. But overall, again, I love doing them. I haven't done anything for a couple of years at the moment, just mainly because there's been a bit of a refocus back on the accountancy practice, because we've got some exciting opportunities within that I need to focus on and deliver on. But looking to do a little bit more. We're looking to do a few, trying to bring my lad's 20, and he's got a bit of an interesting property. So we're going to probably do a bit of a joint venture between me and him, with a doer upper next, I think.
So I think that's a great thing for the next generation, where people kind of take it for granted. Not many people kind of get that financial kind of, I guess, guidance. And so having someone like yourself that obviously is an accountant, so you can kind of give guidance around that side of things, but equally as someone that's invested in property as well, you can give guidance in terms of asset. People don't even know the basics of kind of assets and liabilities and everything else, right? Which I just kind of feel is crazy in today's age and the schooling system.
Oh, it's yeah. I'm going to go off on a little tangent. Drag me back if you need to, but I'm going to. Yeah, you've got to be careful. You can get me on my soapbox here because
Please begin this podcast before.
you're absolutely right. And look, it's not. I do a bit of work with local schools here, and there's a few of us a few business owners locally that get involved and have tried to deliver some financial training to schools. So there's a guy that's a financial advisor. He's got a whole kind of series of stuff that can be delivered to schools, and we've delivered a couple of those. I've been involved in a few of those, and it's really, really rewarding. But you're absolutely right. You when you start talking to kind of early teenage kids with this kind of stuff, there's absolutely no concept of it at all, and to see what they take on through that is absolutely fascinating. But the schools are literally, we're delivering this free of charge to the schools. They're trying to shoehorn it in around trying to deliver a curriculum as well, and I just don't think that the financial education is prominent enough within the curriculum, and I think that needs to change, to be honest, because you're right. Kids don't get it.
Then there's the argument where, well, the kids should be getting taught that at home. And yet I know many adults and parents that they themselves don't have that kind of financial education because obviously they didn't learn it at school and they didn't learn it from their parents. And so the cycle continues to unfold until somebody comes in, i.e. yourself or all the free content that there is on YouTube or what have you, to kind of learn this. But you need to first have someone to kind of push you in that direction, because if you're not even aware and you're not looking for it, then it's so easy to be passed by, isn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you're right. And I think the thing was, again, you go back a couple of generations, money wasn't really talked about, was it? It was that dirty word, although we don't talk about that. And you go, actually, this is completely wrong. It needs to be, because it's so key to everything moving forward that it needs to be understood and learned and taught.
I haven't met a successful person yet that doesn't know the fundamentals of kind of assets, liabilities and credit and everything else. I mean, unless you're winning the lottery, I think. But equally, I think that there's been some statistics where people that win the lottery that don't have any financial education end up back where they were kind of 10 years later, because they spend it all on liabilities, be it the brand new car and a boat or something. And then lo and behold, they're right back where they started. So it just goes to show the importance of understanding the fundamentals of financial education.
It does. It's yeah, and actually, it's a really interesting point you make there. There's actually a client that we look after, and that's exactly the scenario that they went through. They were referred to us by a firm of financial advisors because they needed some taxation advice, but they literally they had nothing. They had a big lottery win. Thankfully, they've got the support around them, so they've got a great financial advisor working with them, but we're supplying some tax advice. But you're absolutely right. I can see it would be so easy for them if that hadn't happened, because by their own admission, they'll talk to us and go, look, it's literally start from the basics because I know nothing about this stuff. So if they hadn't had that intervention, that's exactly what could have happened.
So let's go back to the portfolio then. So you started with buy-to-lets and then you moved up to and did a few commercial, as you said. Is that kind of commercial on the ground floor and resi above, or is that just kind of commercial as a whole? Tell us a bit more about that.
Purely commercial. Luckily, obviously, again, it's relatively easy for us because I've got within the accountancy process, I've got a tenant ready to go in. So we've acquired commercial properties, refurbed, and then effectively rented them to the accountancy practice, which has been really good. That said, one that we did we talk about potentially splitting it, because it's quite a nice property and it splits ground to first floor really, really easily. So there was some talk, and we didn't particularly at that point need all of the space for the accountancy business. So there was some talk of doing a resi above that. Weird story. That property, I'm actually really good friends with the neighbour of that property, and they were kind of a bit anti about having residential up there. So it was kind of that, and the fact that we were growing in that area and we'd need the space again. We kind of went, oh no, okay, let's stick to just a bog standard commercial refurb.
Sure, that makes sense. So,
Yeah.
what's been your experience then from buy-to-lets and HMOs? What's your opinion? Obviously, there's always kind of conversations around which one's kind of better and the different uses for each one, different strategies. So, from your experience and people that are listening that are probably interested in this, what have you found?
Right, it's been really, yeah, it's been fascinating for me, and as I say, we've been really lucky, in so much as kind of everything that we've done's kind of fallen just right for us. The HMOs we've got are student HMOs, so we're up in Coventry, kind of real right in the middle of kind of the student area up there around Coventry Uni, and that's been great. We got some challenges up there, and we're looking at potentially other opportunities with those, maybe later this year and possibly for the year after, because there's a massive influx of property up there. We do ours to a particularly high standard, so we've kind of weathered the storm about with kind of less students coming in and a lot more supply. Um, but some of the assisted living, social housing, that kind of stuff, we've got a couple of people that are exploring options around that, and particularly the client I mentioned earlier that has quite a large portfolio of student stuff. He's actually put 3 or 4, I think now, of his properties over to that, and is towing the water type stuff to see how that pans out, because that on the face of it looks like it could be quite rewarding, with a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of red tape around it as well. So it's that's quite interesting. Certainly, we're still seeing a lot of commercial to resi conversions. We've got a lot of clients that are doing high street stuff, so keeping the shop floor downstairs and resi above, and that still seems to be quite fruitful in the right areas as well. Um, well, the social housing, affordable housing, that kind of stuff. We're seeing a lot of activity in that space. Obviously, government are kind of, you can see their journey wants to push into providing more housing, more affordable housing. So there's some attractive. I mean, they're not amazing by any stretch of the imagination, and there's a lot of the tax stuff around this stuff, in my opinion, is almost just regenerating what's already there and putting a green logo or a sustainability or an affordable housing badge on it, and kind of presenting it as the next best policy. But there is still some attraction to that. Certainly, we're seeing clients that are focusing a lot more in on affordable housing stuff. What I also think, I've been giving a lot of thought to kind of what 2026, I think what 2026 can look like, and I think there's some really nice opportunities there for smaller developers that can pivot a little bit and be a little bit more niche, because I think we've got I think there's quite a wide opportunity of what you can do. You know, you can go really sustainable. You can focus on affordable housing. You can focus on kind of tech and fancy housing. So there's lots of opportunities, and I think those smaller developers have got a great opportunity to really pivot their business and maybe niche a little bit in a certain area.
That was going to be my follow-up question, so I'm glad you touched on that. Kind of how are you seeing the market kind of moving in 2026 and beyond? I guess one of the great things and one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on is because, one, you have your own portfolio, so you can talk from a property investor's kind of mindset, but then equally, because of your role being an accountant, you represent a bunch of different clients within that space. You can then obviously see it from kind of a third-party perspective as well. So it'd be great to hear your opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that's exactly it. I think there's opportunities this year, and I really do. And it goes back to what we were talking about right at the start of this: is that, challenging times brings opportunity if you're sensible and brave enough to grab those opportunities. I think that's very much the case this year. As I say, the affordable housing. We've seen a few of our developers really focusing on that, and I think there's some great opportunities around that, and finding the right locations as well. We've kind of always seen it, but again, I'm seeing it a lot at the moment. Is a lot of people that are doing stuff, maybe slightly. We're based here in the Midlands primarily, but we've seen a lot of people doing stuff up north again as well, because there seems to be a real push. I think the London market is always always feels like it's that at that bubble point. So we're seeing a lot of people doing stuff kind of regionally. So we're seeing a lot around Birmingham, we're seeing a lot around Manchester, Leeds, Newcastle to a degree as well, which is quite interesting. I think,
They talk, sorry, just quickly going on, they
no,
talk a lot about kind of the 18-year life cycle, property life cycle, and obviously the last one being 2008, and we're now knocking on the door of 2026. Anyone can do the quick math is kind of saying, well, 18 years is right here. And we've already seen it with London, where obviously prices have stagnated, actually gone down. And then people are starting to move further and further north, where people are getting kind of priced out of the market and having to kind of go further north, which then obviously continues to push up the prices. And looking at comparison of London compared to Manchester, Liverpool, and other kind of major cities such as Leeds, they've just completely blown them out of the water and they're completely outperformed. However, there's only so long that can go on for until then that market then starts to catch up. And I think that'll be a really interesting place to see what happens next.
yeah, I think you're right. I think ultimately, at the end of the day, we've still got a shortage of housing. You know, it's picking the right and picking that right project and understanding and going into it with eyes wide open, and accepting there's going to be challenges there. I think there's as I said at the start, I think for me the outlook moving forward is there is a confidence there, but it's a bit of a reserve confidence. I think there's so many, and not to get too political, but obviously we've got world events have such a direct impact on economy at the moment. That's always going to be a risk, but I think I'm ever the optimist, so I grab to the green shoots. But we appear to have inflation loosely under control, and I'm touching lots of wood at the moment. Interest rates are, I feel, stabilizing a little bit. We've seen them drop off a little bit. Ultimately, and I've said this to so many people, we're not going to see those interest rates of kind of 0.5%, 0.25%. That was not, I know it felt like the normal because it was there for so long, but that isn't normal. That it's not sustainable at that point. So I think if we can kind of get interest rates around the kind of the 3%, I think that's normal. And I think if we can get some consistency to that, so that people get a confidence and go, okay, look, I think that's where it's going to sit. I think, and we've got some growth, albeit it's slow growth in the economy, but it's steady growth, which again might not seem exciting, but those factors together kind of give us that confidence coming back, I think.
I hope so, because I find that one of the biggest killers of the property market is stagnation, because everyone essentially sits on their hands. For house builders and developers, they make their money when they sell the units, not when they kind of get started. So the whole point is the exit. And so if people are scared to move house because they're scared of what the property value is going to be, if they're worried about kind of where the market's going to be, they don't want to over leverage themselves, they don't want to extend themselves, people will then just sit down and kind of wait. And so then from a property investor's perspective, you kind of go, well, do I want to do this flip project if we're not sure what the exit's going to be? And then from a developer's perspective, well, do we want to start this project if we're not sure if we're going to be able to sell them in 6 months' time or what have you? And so it seems like stagnation is what brings the whole thing to a standstill. But I think sometimes the best things that can happen is actually for the market to take a bit of a turn, correct itself, and then you kind of go, okay, we now know where we're at and we can now start to move forward. But it's this uncertainty that we've kind of had over the last 2-3 years that I think has kind of caused that bit of a ripple. And I think now that's where people are like, right, 2026, let's try and get back to hitting the ground running.
I wholeheartedly believe that. I think that's kind of what I hope. Q4 last year, that's kind of what I was hoping for. We get the autumn statement out of the way, and look, the autumn statement was in my opinion was something of nothing really. There wasn't really anything in there particularly. It probably was nowhere near as, and I'm convinced this is by design these days. But I'm convinced that all the rumor mills start in the run up to the autumn statement or to any of the statements. And then when it actually gets delivered, everyone goes, oh, actually, it wasn't quite as bad as I thought it was going to be. And I think we got through that, and I think people have then gone, okay, let's get Christmas out of the way, but let's come back to 2026 with that newfound confidence, and I say confidence slightly, as I say, slightly reserved, in so much as it's certainly not. People aren't jumping up and down going, "This is amazing, let's go." It's very reserved, but I think that's okay, because it gives us that steady build and steady growth.
Yeah, I completely agree. So I guess there what you're saying is optimism. And it's nice because I had Michael Primrose, commercial mortgage broker, on the other week, and discussing his views on the market and the budget and what this might kind of happen in 2026. So if people haven't heard that podcast yet, if you kind of scroll back a few, you'll be able to come and listen to that one. But it's kind of nice to hear from an accountant's perspective what your kind of view on the market is in terms of the budget and its updates as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. As I say, I think there was, I think for certainly post the autumn statement, chatting to property clients, I think there was an element of relief a little bit, because I think as a community we generally felt like we got a real kicking back in 2024, and I think that was wrong. I think that damaged the market as well, and I think it, to a degree, continues to damage the industry. But I think it's one of those things we've kind of gone, okay, accept it, get on board with it. So I think for there almost to be very little that kind of directly impacted specifically kind of property businesses was a bit of a welcome relief. For me, it's a bit of a negative way of looking at it, but ultimately we've come out of the statement going, well, okay, business as usual a little bit, and it's given us that confidence of going, okay, we know where we are, we know what we've got, we might not like it, but we've got to just plow on and make the opportunities work in this new environment.
Just going back to the budget, I think it was the emergency press conferences she did kind of a week beforehand, which was kind of just never really happened before. And everyone kind of thought, well, if this is happening, this isn't good news. And obviously that's why the market shifted, because a lot of the time the market's kind of run on fear. And when something like that happens, and I think maybe that's what then forced them to change, or perhaps kind of that's why it wasn't as scary as what was made up, because then it kind of built up, and all you had to do was look on social media or look at any newspaper, and there was kind of big piece around it, and it was kind of promoting a lot of fear, and a lot of fear doesn't promote economic growth, does it? You kind of look at how we've kind of performed over the last few years in comparison to some of the other G7 countries, etc. We're kind of flatlining while a lot of others seem to grow. So I think that's where a lot of the UK economy is starting to kind of be concerned.
I think, yes, I think you're right, and I think the ultimate. Well, I'll be careful not to get too political with this stuff, but ultimately, unfortunately, in my opinion, we've got a government that hasn't got business acumen, hasn't got business experience at the core of it. But we've just got to kind of unfortunately accept that, and it's a horrible thing for me to say, because as I say, I'm ever the optimist, and this feels a very negative way of looking at it. But ultimately, we are where we are, and we've got to make the best of what we've got. And I think that's kind of the sense that I get from business owners and talking to them, is going, look, this ain't pretty. We don't like this, but at least give us that. At least we feel like we've got some stability. As I say, we might not like it, but that stability, because you're absolutely right. What you don't want is you don't want the markets being fearful all the time, because, as you say, it either stagnates or decisions are made because actually they're running in fear, and that doesn't help any of us.
The thing is, this is the reality, and this is why one of the reasons why I set up this podcast, because it's important to have the right people around you and the right knowledge, because times do get tough. It's not just kind of green grass the whole way through. There are times where you're going to have to kind of go, okay, this is a tough market. How do we adapt? But I think some of the problems that you see on social media, be it LinkedIn's bad for it and other social media platforms, that everyone kind of talks about their wins and how certain successes are and how great things are. And then from a third party point of view, you're kind of going, well, I feel like I'm treading water here, and yet everyone else seems to be talking about how great they are. But obviously that is social media, and so that's why I wanted to create a longer form content such as this podcast, where people can actually get into the nitty gritty and actually talk about more openly about the market and their views. But my view on that is, if you can survive tough markets, well, then what happens when the market turns good? Well, you've already gone through this hardship. So then the next few years, as you said about your growth in 2008, there's going to be opportunities there for these businesses to then grow and scale off the back of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you are absolutely right. And I think, like, full circle back to what we were talking about having the right people around you, isn't it? Because you're absolutely right. You know, social media distorts everything, because it is almost ultra positive, as it were. And people, we need to be realistic and go, look, it's tough, but actually, and I'm a massive fan of working with with others in the same industry as well. I do it a lot within the accountancy space, where I love talking to and working with other accountants. It was a bit when I first started the business, I was always keen to meet other accountants locally and chat, and you know put the world to rights, as it were. But I was kind of, it was a little bit fearful, really. I don't other accountants kind of shied away from it a little bit, going, "Oh, this is a bit weird. We don't do this stuff. People might nick clients." It's nothing for me. It's not about that. It's about, look, we've all got the same challenges. It's get in a room, chat about it over a cup of coffee, over a beer, whatever. Because you put the world to right, and it is important to realise that actually the chances are, whatever you're going through, everyone else is going through the same thing to some differing degree.
I think that's a great outlook to have. And it's funny because I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it was Modern Wisdom, Stephen Bartlett, and they were talking a lot about kind of the English culture versus the American culture, and that, and kind of the fear of stealing clients or stepping on anyone's toes, or people kind of saying, well, why do you want to meet with me? We're potentially a competitor, in inverted commas. And it's very an English mindset. And yet the American mindset is the American dream. You work hard, and one day you might be able to achieve greatness. And then equally, if you surround yourself with other people, you too can bring them up, they bring you up, you bring them up, and everyone succeeds together. Well,
Exactly. So
and I wish
yeah.
we did pull some of that across the UK. And that's one of the reasons why I set up the Property Developers Network, because a few people have said to me, well, why do you want other developers in the room? You're going to be sharing your knowledge and your insights, and you're going to be putting them in contact with, other good professionals that can help their business. And I think, well, first of all, they're across the UK, so we're not really going to be stepping on each other's toes. And two, the reason for the Property Developers Network is to assist SME developers in delivering more homes to the UK. And in my opinion, if we can do that, then fantastic. And that is a win-win for all parties involved.
Exactly. It's a win for the industry as a whole, and I think that's massive. I'm a huge supporter of this, and really love being involved with you guys for that very reason. If we can develop that that group, that network, and everyone supporting everyone, and everyone comes in with the right mindset, then everyone wins without fail. There's so much. I say it within accountancy. There's so much business out there. We don't need to be competing with us. It's the same with property development. At the end of the day, there's so many opportunities out there. There'll be something there'll be an opportunity that's not right for you, Tom, but it'll be right for Sue, who's also in the room as well. And that for me is the way it should be. And you're absolutely right. I travel mostly on pleasure. We travel to America a fair bit, and it is that whole positivity, that whole thought process I absolutely love. And I'm with you. I wish we could drag a little bit back over.
Maybe
here.
we just need to go over there and just drag a bit of that energy over here. But
exactly,
I think it's also the energy of the people that you put in your room, and that's why it's so important. I saw this image, and it was a picture of a bowl of fruit, and then they had kind of a rotten strawberry or whatever in that bowl, and then it cuts to the next scene, and lo and behold, that rotten strawberry is then connected onto the other fruit within that bowl, and then obviously the extension of that rot has kind of extended. And it just goes to show that if you get good people in a room together and can assist each other, then that energy in that room is great. But then all you need, unfortunately, and we can look at kind of big companies and big corporations for this, all you need is one or two kind of bad seeds in that company, and it starts to impact the rest of that company culture. I've seen it firsthand, and I'm sure you have as well.
I have, and it's really weird. It was one of the things that I realised very early on. So I'll be honest, when I started out in business, I probably wasn't sounds really strange because of what I said about the fact that I loved working with clients and working with their businesses, but I wasn't particularly a people person as such. But I very quickly learned that actually our business is all about the team and the staff. I wouldn't be here without the team that we've got here. They are brilliant, but it is so important to keep that team in its peak shape, as it were. And it is so easy to bring the wrong the wrong type of person, or the person, or somebody that doesn't quite fit with the culture that we've built into it, and it becomes poisonous. It's horrible, and I've seen it, and it's dangerous. But it very much, when I realised that, it very much changed my mindset around people management, and particularly around recruitment as well, because our recruitment is all around finding the not. Obviously, they need to be technically strong, but ultimately, also as equally, they've got to be the right cultural fit, because otherwise that will damage the rest of the team.
I think that's one of the most important things, right? You need someone, it's all well and good having someone that's really great at their job, but if they rub all your internal stuff up the wrong way, or they really impact the culture, then that then actually impacts the overall execution of the company. And so protecting that is just so important. So no, it's good to kind of understand a bit more as kind of the company side of things and your plans. So what are your thoughts then for kind of 2026 and kind of the economy as a whole?
As I say, moving forward, I think we've got a great opportunity. I think it's delicate. I think, worldwide political events could have an impact without a doubt, and it's right to mention it, but ultimately it's kind of out of our control, as it were. But we've got to be mindful of that. But I think we've got a despite what I've said about maybe not liking quite what we've got, at the end of the day, we've got a solid foundation at the moment that can be built upon. Yes, it might not be all amazing and big bang, but it's steady growth, and if we can keep that going, yes, it's not very exciting, but it'll move us forward in the right way. And I think if that continues, then in theory the markets won't get spooked by things, and that, as you said, is not what we need, because what we don't need is people suddenly going, actually, no, I'm going to hold fire. I'm not going to do that project. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to invest in that development, because I just want to see what happens, because then everything stalls. And we need to avoid that. But I think we've got a way forward that can do that. As I said, I think there is opportunity for the right developments. I think people should be really, really looking closely at kind of assisted living stuff, affordable housing, tech within the sector. Tech's a bit of a passion of mine as well, less so within the property sector, but obviously that it's the same. The tech that we can develop and use within the accounting space is really exciting. Quite like that kind of stuff, and it means that we can automate and a lot of the more mundane stuff, and get the team members more time with clients rather than just churning numbers, sort of thing. And I can see that similar thing coming through within the prop tech area. I think there's an opportunity around. You touched on solicitors. That whole conveyancing is ripe for some tech in there that can really speed the process up. Obviously, the government are pushing forward with digitalization of planning apps and that kind of stuff. And I think we need all of that, and it'll be good. I'm slightly skeptical, because big tech projects from government do take time and stuff, but I think it's the right direction to travel, and just speed that whole development process up, because ultimately they need houses built.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I was talking to an agent yesterday, and we were kind of talking about where the UK market is right now, but actually the UK has always been a safe bet. There's always been kind of that trusted money sort of place, and what we've obviously been seeing kind of globally and kind of the wars and other bits that are taking place, we're now thinking, well, will some of this investment that's gone further afield where they wanted greater returns, are they going to go, well, actually, there's kind of some greater risk here in these certain areas. Are we going to bring it back to the UK and there be kind of a safer place for that money to be invested?
Definitely. I think there's definitely a case for that. Again, to a degree, it all sounds a little bit boring in so much as, nice and safe, but ultimately that's what we need at the moment. That fits with where we are. So if we can get some of that, that'd be fantastic.
I think the prop tech space is going to be really interesting to see how it's unfolded as well. I mean, I've been doing this for 9 years, and even kind of the land sourcing side of things when I kind of first started, and I was having to go through all the council documentation, all the PDFs of all the sites they had, and they'd have like an Excel spreadsheet, and I had to have like 3 screens up on how to find different things. And now it's all in one software. And I did a webinar the other day, and it just goes to show how kind of easy it is now. And so I think if they can do that in terms of the land sourcing and acquisition side, then if they could do it on the property conveyancing and everything else, I think it's just going to advance where we're at in the next few years. So I'm really interested to see how that kind of unfolds.
Yeah, I think that's a really exciting times, and I think what it'll do, it will over time. We're seeing it I do a little bit in the mortgage space as well, and we're seeing it in there as well. And I think, if we can get the tech working in the mortgage space, working in the planning space, then everything it will just, particularly the conveyancing space. I mean, that's ripe for it. There is there is an element to me thinking, oh, is that something I want to get involved in? But I need to be careful and not get involved in too many different things. But I think there's a great opportunity there, to really, really make that process so much slicker, because there's no way it should take 6, 8, 12 weeks or something to convey to buy a bloody house at the end of the day.
You can't say we're this advanced society and all these things that we've done over the last kind of couple of decades, and yet we're still operating on a system that's this antiquated.
So no, I think it's a great opportunity there, but I'm not convinced we'll see that this year particularly. But the kind of the step change that excites me, sort of thing. But potentially next.
So for people that are listening that want to get in touch with you, be it they're kind of a property developer and they're looking to create a new business, or they need some accountancy support, what's the best way people can get in contact with you?
I'm quite active on LinkedIn, so you'll find me on LinkedIn. Website haywardwright.co.uk. I've got all my contact details on there as well, my email address, telephone numbers on there. Feel free to reach out. And it sounds like selfish, it's generally not, but I'm more than happy for people to reach out, have a chat. If we have a nice conversation over the phone for half an hour, but it comes to nothing, that's absolutely fine. No issue with that. And as I say, it's one of the reasons I'm really excited to be involved with you, Tom, and involved with the network and stuff like that. It's meeting like-minded people. It's good fun, and we enjoy it.
Good to hear. Well, thank you for that, Alistair, and thank you for coming on. Were there any other kind of closing statements, any questions that you had, or?
No, I think that's everything from me, Tom. It's been brilliant. I really enjoyed that.
Well, thank you very much. And if anybody wants to get hold of Alistair, I'll also post it in the show notes below as well. All right, brilliant. Well, that's Build Your Future. I'll see you in the next one.
Cheers, Tom.